Good evening. I am welcoming you to our school board meeting of our formal meeting within February, and it is February 27th, 2023, and it is 6:30 now. I appreciate you all being here, and once again, welcome to our school board meeting. I would like to call this meeting to order. And so therefore we will begin. Prior to jumping into the agenda, what I would like to make mention is there's been an obvious need that we appoint a parliamentarian for the board. And so what I would like to do is recognize that Jordan Hickman has graciously volunteered to lend needed information and skills and abilities within the Roberts Rules of Order. And the role of the parliamentarian is to advise the board. The parliamentarian does not rule. Another role of the parliamentarian is to prevent problems by serving every single member of our school board. So if there is a need, a question, an unknowing process, or an observation, we will rely on Jordan to be able to help us out through process as guided by Robert's Rules of Order. So Jordan, thank you for sharing with us your expertise. Thank you. There we are. Okay. So we've called our meeting to order, and I would like to ask, please, for a motion to approve our agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any comments? Discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
If you are opposed, please say no. Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And so we have an agenda for the evening. And if you haven't found one or picked one up, there might be one left over on that table as you walked into the room. So our next item on our agenda is if there are any requests to remove topics from our consent agenda. And the consent agenda this evening is very long, and so are there any motion to remove a topic from our consent agenda? All right, I'm not hearing any requests to do that, and so we will move into the action item, which is the motion to approve our consent agenda. So is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll defer to Dave. All right, and so any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the consent agenda has been motioned and has been approved. So our next topic is, actually we call it our special topic. And so this evening, we will be hearing from our Bemidji High School Career and Technical Education representative. Thank you very much for coming with us this evening.
Thank you. I get to talk right away. Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, cabinet, my name is Tony Holmes. I teach construction trades at the Bemidji High School, and I'm here to represent Career and Technical Education, which February is Career and Technical Education Month across the country. So I believe that we have one of the best industrial tech departments in the entire state. I am biased, I get that, but we have one of our students here with you guys who has definitely taken advantage of what we have to offer down there. So what is CTE? The broad definition of it is it combines academic and technical skills and the knowledge to become successful in today's competitive market. What I'd like you guys to think about is how has CTE affected you today? When you woke up this morning, was your shower hot? Did you have running water? If you didn't, who would you call? Did your car start? When you were driving down the road, how are the roads today? What I'm trying to get at is all of these things, once upon a time, found their beginning in a CTE program somewhere. Some benefits of the CTE program, it really connects students with the school. They have a reason to want to come a little bit stronger. I have kids that would skip other classes and they would actually come out to my class. No, I'm not supposed to tell their parents that, but they tend to do that once in a while. One of the things that I've recently come across is that increased graduation rates. If a student is in 2 or more CTE courses, their graduation rate is over 92%. It does help them become more prepared for post-secondary opportunities, and when I say post-secondary, I'm not just saying going to college. Not all of our students go to a 2 or 4 year college, but they all are going to work somewhere. And I think our job is to prepare them for the world of work. If that includes a 2-year school, if it does include a 4-year school, that's great. I'm just going to keep on going a little bit. What we have going on at Bemidji High School is we have 11 teachers offering over 70 courses. And what I mean by 11 teachers, in order to be certified as a career and technical education teacher, you have to have so much work experience, and you also have to hold another endorsement on your teaching license. So currently right now there's a course list that we have over 70 classes that 11 CTE teachers are certified to teach. Mine is construction trades, and I want to talk specifically about that because I am passionate about what we're doing in construction trades too. We began the program back in 1994. Since 1994, we've built over 50 homes in the community with students. Headwaters Regional Development Commission is our partner in this, and they've been helping us out for almost 30 years now, and all of our homes that we build are either between 3 and 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. The one we're building this year is 1,880 square feet. And that's a picture of the last 3 homes that we've built. The one on top is the one that we are actually in the process of building right now. We are just installing flooring. So a little overview on how our program works is the students come to school the first day. Second day, we are actually out on site building. And they get experiences all the way from pouring concrete to installing cabinets. So every facet of the building industry, the kids are exposed to. And we try to do that in all of our programs in CTE. We want to make sure that if they go into automotive, they can see the basics of how to change light bulbs, how to change oil. Yet let's get more in depth on suspension systems and brake systems too. So with the construction trades program, we've had many students go through our program over the last 30 years, and I can sit here and I can tell you stories all night long of different students that I've had the gracious experience of working with. But I'm just going to touch on maybe 5 of them. I have a current student right now. He's going to be spending next week in Mexico. He's a junior in my program. He's going to be going down to Mexico to work on a shelter for women who have been trafficked. And he says, I want to be a carpenter. I want to do something in the building trades. He doesn't have it defined yet, but he knows what he wants to do. Couple of the current, or just recent graduates, one of them came to the house just last week, wanted to see how we're doing. On graduation 5 years ago, he decided to go work for Kraus Anderson. He spent a week after school, kind of getting everything in order, and went right to work for Kraus Anderson as a union apprentice carpenter. 5 years later, he's now a journeyman. He's going to be moving with his girlfriend to Indiana. She's going to go to optometry school. And what the joy of working with Jacob was is he would always call me. Hey, Holmes, how you doing? What's going on? And watching his pathway, obviously while he was in school, and then as he went through his apprenticeship program, I always asked him, Jacob, are you happy with the decision you made? Big smile comes to his face. He's thrilled. He's taken all the training that he has. He's moving to Indiana, and he's going to continue as a journeyman. He said there's about a $5 billion hotel or a hospital going up down there that he's going to be working on. A couple other students, they were brothers. One of them, I got to work with a plumber that I know as a senior. He was going to school, and then he was working as a plumber with him. He went on, he's now in his apprenticeship for plumbing, and he loves it. Same thing, I asked him, how you doing? I'm loving it. As a plumber, that's interesting, that's great. And his brother works with him. They both work with the same company. And last year, they did the plumbing and heating on the high school house. So watching them transition from the students to now as professionals doing this. And I can share the same thing. We had some subcontractors come and work on the house with the students this year. And one of them said, I remember being in here 25 years ago with the students, and now he's actually working with the students, kind of showing them the tips and tricks along the way. There's a couple other former graduates who I'd like to share too, Donnie Wilcox and Mark Fuller, and if anybody knows those two, I think you can agree with me that they're pretty good guys. And I keep on remembering they want to do what's best for Bemidji schools, and they keep on saying, how can I help? What can I do to help? We have kids going down to their offices. We've had some former graduates who have worked with them, and they were in the program 25 years ago. This program, and I'm not just talking about construction trades, I'm talking about all of our CTE programs. They're offering these pathways for students to come back because they have the pride of their experience at Bemidji High School, and they want to do what's best in the community for the students who are coming through. So I'm proud to be a lumberjack. I can't tell you how excited I am about what we do in our department in career and technical education. I don't want to talk too long because we have a full slate tonight. But one of the things I want to leave you with is CTE is the answer to the nation's projected deficit of 6.5 million skilled workers. We're going to be facing a huge skilled worker shortage. We already are, but it's just going to get worse. And I wanted to thank you for supporting what we're doing at Bemidji High School for career and tech ed. We got some great things going on, and we want to continue that drive of where we're going with career and tech ed. So if you have any questions for me, otherwise I would really like to thank you for the time tonight.
Now's our chance. Do you have questions, comments?
I have a question. Would you allow a guy that has 10 thumbs to come out and visit your work site?
Absolutely. We have rooms.
Okay, that'll work,
I
yeah.
will send you all a note for where the house site is, and we welcome people to come out anytime and show. The kids are very proud of what's happening. We actually may have somebody in line to purchase it who's a relative of one of the students, so it's pretty cool.
Well, I wanted to share that I've had 2 children take advantage of enrolling in classes that have furthered their their own personal visions of the future and then helped them get there. One, my daughter took a CNA class, and now she's a graduate in college in the healthcare field. My son helped build homes for 2 or 3 years. That was his favorite class. And so he has the ability and the capacity now to fix stuff in his own home and build onto his home and help his mom and dad do some maintenance too. And he's not a contractor, but he's a full-time lineman now. So he's working with wood, but there's just tall, big poles. So anyway, I thank you for bringing the career tech ed and for kids. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you, but I also want to thank you for some of the things you brought. I know that you've already been talking to us about where CTE could go and how that we could become leaders in CTE education, because it is so vital for our future and connecting our kids with their passions and making sure that we are making high school relevant. So I want to thank you for your leadership in that.
Thank you.
Okay, the special topics are always one of my favorite things. It's an opportunity to learn more in detail about different programs that are occurring and going on within the school district. So thank you again. Our next item on our agenda is our student representative reports. And Nick, please, thank you.
Yeah, so at last month's meeting, Aiden and Will talked to us about the unified basketball game, and I just wanted to share the success of that game. It happened a couple weeks ago, and it was absolutely amazing. All of the kids had a great time. I've talked to some of the adults that went there, some of the parents of those kids, and it was an amazing experience for everyone that I hope we can do again next year. Some of the other sports that are going on right now, girls basketball has finished their regular season, and they're going to go to Sartell on Thursday, I believe. Boys basketball has their last home game right now, actually, and they'll start sections next week. And then Holly's obviously gone, but she informed me that LVB at their competition this weekend got the People's Choice Award, which is their first time in program history that they have received that award. So I just want to give them a congratulations for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah. So did anybody have any questions for Nick? Comments?
So I went to that Bemidji Unified Special Olympics game, and it was amazing to see that community camaraderie come together, to see those high school students there cheering them on. They had these huge, what do they call them, fat heads of the players. It was amazing. I was in tears, I think, almost the whole time. My hands hurt from clapping the whole time. I was honored to sit behind a group of Monaga boys who were there watching one of the siblings, and the encouragement that those boys had for the brother. I mean, we could learn a lot from those students that were there that night. I couldn't have been more proud of the community members and the students that showed up to support that.
So thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. It was good. And the Pioneer had a fabulous news story about it too. So that was also good to read. The next item on our agenda is the listening session review, and I forget who attended. So thank you. Thank you. If you could just succinctly share, please, what folks brought forward.
So we had a gentleman, a parent, who came to last month's listening session, and just the concern about the lunches for the Paul Bunyan Center, and to reconsider getting the breakfast and lunch back for the kids. And then, in the past, there's been some concerns about what to do with Paul Bunyan Center, whether it should stay open, whether it should be closed. And he just voiced that, if this ever comes up again, it's a great building, and to reconsider not closing it down. So that was that one. And then we had another teacher parent come in, just concerned about when people come to the schools to present to the kids, if there's a way to do kind of a background vetting check for these presenters, to see who's actually coming here to talk to our kids. Another gentleman talked about Youth Alive, the program that's out there in the community, and just something to maybe bring to our school. And so we encouraged him to send us some more emails and stuff. It's been around for many years, and I guess they have been to Bemidji before. It's been a long time, but they're all around the state. And then we had a community member. She has never attended a school board meeting before, and she just wanted to attend and be in the audience and watch it. So that's who we had.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Jenny, did you have anything to add? No? Okay. All righty. That's a valuable opportunity for people to come and talk with two school board members and to be able to have a conversation during that time. The next topic on our agenda is under donations, and I believe we have a few, eh?
We do. We have some donations. Again, I want to thank all of our donors for their wonderful support of all things Bemidji. So I'll go through that list right now. So $1,500 from CS Fitness LLC for the Bemidji High School Art Club. We received a donation for $3,200 from Bemidji Eagles and Eagles Auxiliary for Horace May Hippocamp all-terrain wheelchairs. And then the following donations are for the New York music trip, and I'll put those together here. So $5,000 from Mark Thorson, $5,000 from Mark Sand and Gravel Company, $1,000 from Bemidji Eagles Club, $500 from Security Bank USA. And those are all, again, for the New York music trip. So I want to thank our donors, our community, for their continued support of Bemidji area schools.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, a big shout out to people that make those donations for the schools and the kids. It'll be an amazing field trip. The next item on our agenda, oh, I'm sorry. So we have heard of a summary of the donations, and there is a motion associated with it. And so may I hear a motion, please, to accept the donations that Jeremy has presented?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. So any comments? Questions? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say no. So that motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, now, moving on. Our next item on our agenda is falls under equitable student achievement. And the first topic is a conversation about the summer learning program.
Good
And
evening,
Colleen.
Board Chair, and all stakeholders. It's that time of year again when we're actively planning summer school. Our K-8 and high school summer programs will be held June 12th through July 20th. There will not be programming on July 3rd and 4th this year. K-8 will continue to focus on the academics in the morning and be activity-based in the afternoon. K-8 students are referred through recommendations based upon reading, math, and social emotional needs. Our program typically has approximately 350 participants in the summer for a 6-week program. The high school summer program is based upon the need for credit recovery for our students who have struggled with courses, with a course or more. Summer is the best time of the year to catch up on credit, and we just want to put that information out there now that we are gearing up for summer school. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other, so does anybody have any questions? No. Summer seems a long way when we have 2 feet of snow out there and it's all gray and cold. I'm glad you're thinking ahead. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a class size report, and I'll defer it to Jeremy.
All right, thank you. So on the class size report that you have listed there, we have an amended page because there's 3 classrooms at Lincoln Elementary School. They're actually over the 25, so K through 2 by our policy, 25 and over, we need to report back to you. So there's actually 27 students in each of those 3 classrooms. So I just want to make sure that that's new information, and I want to make sure that you guys have that because it's our obligation as a superintendent and cabinet to report those information to you so that you know about that. Other than that, all the other information is correct, that we have 14 classes at the high school. They're currently over the policy, very similar to what we reported earlier this year. 12 are over by 1 or 2 students, and 2 classes are over by 3 students over the policy language. So again, there's nothing that requires us to take any action on this, but I just want to, again, this is informational for you as a school board.
Thank you. So anybody have any questions? All right. Okay. We will move into, there is no topic under the relationships and collaboration portion of our agenda, and we are then moving into the topic of a high-quality district, and there are a number of factors beneath that. And the first one is we will be looking at adopting a revised budget, and there is a handout. And Chrissy, one of your last tasks with us.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Long-Wilkner, members of the board. Tonight you have 2 handouts from me. The first one is a revised budget book, which is a multiple-page colored document. It is a condensed version of our preliminary budget book, which we approve in June, which is 30 pages of all things school finance and is available on our district website. This, again, is the revised copy, a condensed version, which will also be available on our district website once approved this evening. So I'm going to walk through that, and then accompanying it is the action statement that will allow you to approve the revised budget. So I'm going to start by going through at a high level, going through the budget book to give you an idea of how to read that, what we're trying to accomplish here, and then I will go through the action statement and ask for approval. So on page 1, this is our 10,000-foot view of our budget. This is where all of the numbers that I'm referring to tonight will come from, and I will, on the left column, list all of our various funds that we work through, which is the general fund, special programs, federal funds, et cetera, et cetera. The first column is the beginning fund balance for each of those funds at the beginning of this fiscal year, and then it gives projected revenues for each of the funds, projected expenditures, projected surplus or deficit, and then ends with a projected ending balance. And I'm going to come back to this page a couple different times, but if we move to page 2, which is a much more detailed page, this is our beginning fund balances for each of our funds. And so when we talk about fund balances, there are many, many categories within that, different revenue sources that are restricted or assigned. And so this is the detailed breakdown of the fund balance. And to show you how it works with our lead page, about a third of the way down on the far right column under ending balance, you can see general fund. It's right above that first blue line. And you can see that we had an ending fund balance in the general fund last year of $14.2 million. If you flip back to page 1, you can see that that $14.2 million is our beginning fund balance for this year. So that's how this page interacts with our lead page. Moving on to the next page, it's that same information for what we approved as our preliminary budget. And then page 4 is our revised budget. And again, we'll tie the numbers back. If you look a third of the way down on the far right column under ending balance, and we'll use the general fund as our example again, we've got $12.9 million there, and that ties up back up to page 1 for our projected ending balance for the general fund. The following pages, and there's about pages 5 through 15, is a breakdown of each of our funds individually. So we'll start the general fund here, and I'm not going to walk through each one of them because what I'm doing with this budget book is giving you 3 different ways, 3 different views to look at the same information. So how do we want to break it down? Do we want to look from that high level view? Do we want to look at it from a fund balance view, or do we want to see, as in this case, a breakdown of the various categories of revenue and the various categories of expenditures for each of the funds? So there's 3 columns here. It gives the year-end actuals from the last school year. It gives our preliminary projected revenue and expenditures for each fund, and then gives our revised projected expenditures and revenues for each fund. So this is just a way to look a little bit more in depth. For purposes of this board meeting and for purposes of the time that I'm given here tonight, we want to look at it from that high level view, but I also want the information to be available so that you have it at your fingertips. It will be on our district website after this evening. So now that we've walked through the budget book, I'm going to go through the action statement that it aligns with. And each of the numbers, I'm going to round for your listening convenience and my ability to read off multi-million-dollar numbers. I'm going to round up, but each of those numbers will tie back to the various funds on page 1. So a school board is required to approve a preliminary budget prior to July 1st of each year. The preliminary budget is based on assumptions and estimates, and it acts as a baseline for our fiscal planning. After the prior fiscal year, so in this case, the 21-22 school year is closed out and audited, we are then able to take that finalized data and combine it with current year-to-date information to produce a revised budget that gives us a more accurate prediction of our anticipated revenues and expenditures. Our general fund is made up of 5 different funds, funds 1, 3, 5, 10, and 20. They're each accounted for separately, like I showed in those back pages. And each of those funds have their own projection that, when combined, make up what we consider and what we refer to as our general fund as a whole. So our general operations, which again is funds 1, 10, and 20. The general fund is projecting revenues of $53.5 million and expenditures of $57 million for a projected operating deficit of $3.5 million. These numbers reflect the 2% increase in the state funding formula, as well as the continued lost revenue due to the decline in enrollment attributed to the pandemic. The Special Schools Fund, Fund 10, is projected to operate at a slight deficit this year of about $11,000. Federal programs, which is Fund 20, typically operates at a net zero balance. This is because most federal programs are reimbursement-based, which means that we first spend the award and then we request revenue reimbursement to offset those expenditures. However, in the current year and the last couple of years, we've had a unique situation. Pandemic-related relief funds have resulted in additional federal funds, which we know as and have referred to as the ESSER funds. Those are being used to offset current year revenue losses and to maintain continuity of operations. These funds have a projected surplus of $4.2 million, and that represents the ESSER funds that are being used to offset the lost enrollment revenue, keep our existing staff employed, and address class sizes, learning recovery, mental health, and other student needs post-pandemic. And there's also a detailed COVID-related dashboard on our district website where you can see each of the funds that we've received and how those funds have been spent. Moving on to the Transportation Fund, which is Fund 3. The Bemidji School District covers 824 square miles, and it's one of the largest districts geographically in the state. State funding for transportation is generated on a per-pupil basis. So this creates a disparity between the amount of revenue generated and, in our case, the actual cost to transport those students through such a large district. And it results in our transportation fund continually operating in a deficit. So the current year projection of $4.3 million in revenue and $5.8 million in expenditures nets to a projected deficit of $1.6 million, $1.5 million if I round that. This unfunded deficit each year has to be covered by the general fund and otherwise what would be classroom educational dollars. And so that's something we advocate for at the state level to equalize that funding formula and make us whole in the transportation cross-subsidy, because it is also a mandated service that we cannot cut. Moving on to capital projects, which is Fund 5. The Capital Projects Fund is the final fund that makes up our overall general fund. Revenues in this fund are restricted by state statute to be used only for capital projects and facility maintenance, and they cannot be used to offset general fund operational costs. Revenues are projected to be $3 million, and expenditures are projected at $3.5 million for a net deficit of $500,000. This is a planned deficit this year for curriculum purchases in the current year, which is another allowable use of those capital project funds. The Food Service Fund is projecting revenues of $3.6 million and expenditures of $3.6 million. And again, I'm rounding, so there's roughly a projected deficit here of $30,000. Our Community Service Fund, Fund 4, is made up of multiple programs including community education, school-age care, school readiness, and early childhood family education. As a whole, the Community Service Project is projecting revenues of $2.4 million and expenditures of $2.4 million, rounded, for a small projected net surplus of about $3,000. Our Construction Fund, which is Fund 6, long-term facility maintenance bonds were issued last spring for partial funding of the BHS roof replacement project. So there's a projected deficit of just about $1 million there, and that is planned because it will be covered by the Capital Projects Fund, and it was planned to be funded that way as a joint funding project, partially through LTFN bonds and partially through capital project funds. Debt service and OPEB, which is our Fund 7, our remaining funds of the debt service and OPEB funds are levied revenues that pay bonded debt. So the difference between the revenues and expenditures are due to the state's requirement that we levy 105% of our debt payments and then pay back any over-levied funds through future levy adjustments. So in summary, this budget projection, while more accurate than the preliminary budget, is still very much an estimate. Revenues and expenditures are monitored throughout the year compared to our budget projections. Again, I want to say that the district has benefited from pandemic-related relief funds to supplement our budget as our enrollment-driven revenue has dropped at the same time that student needs and inflation have increased. So these funds will expire in the 23-24 school year, and as we plan for the future, the district will need to continue to look for cost reductions as well as ways to increase revenue. So with that, I am recommending that you approve the revised budget this evening as presented.
So this is an action item with a motion and an approval. So may I hear a motion, please, to approve the 22-23 budget revision as was just presented?
I'll motion that.
Thank you. And may I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Now is a good time for questions and comments. That was a lot of information, and I really thank you for pulling it together so that there is no question and comments. But there is time as we delve further into the budget and start having to make some changes in the future too, that we'll have time to reread this and learn it again. So thank you again. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, may I hear the motion to approve the revised budget as presented?
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you. What? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say all those in favor. Sorry. Sorry about that. And thanks for reminding me. It's hard to keep track. Okay, let's try this again. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. So, thank you very much, and that motion was unanimously approved. Thank you. We are still, still on. We are continuing within our high-quality district topic, and we have a number of policies and some adaptations of existing policies. And so therefore, they will be revised, and we need to be able to hear and understand them within our board meeting. So the first one here on our agenda is the first reading of policy SBR 200-90-20, the Veterans Preference. And I will be turning these over to Jeremy.
Thank you. As I've mentioned last month too, we're in the process of going through our policy book and just making sure that we have mandated policies in place, making sure that we have amendments to mandated policies and to policies that have been updated by MSBA. As you guys know, MSBA is been very instrumental in adapting policies. It goes through a rigorous process there, so we've been trying to use their policy review process. So as you see a lot of policies come forward, that's just a process of making sure that our policies are up to date. I do want to reference our Veterans Preference Policy, which is the one that we're talking about right now. This is a mandated policy. This will not change in practical terms anything that we're doing. We are following state statute. We are following, we've had some conversations with HR on this. We're certainly in compliance, but it is a mandated policy and we need to put this in place. So that's why you're seeing this being presented as a new policy. So this is not an updated policy. This is a policy that's being put in place, but it is required, and we do need to adopt a policy on veterans preference. Now, it doesn't have to be this one. So if the board did not feel this was a good policy or did not like this policy, we just have to have a policy that outlines how we're going to treat veterans preference. So this is the MSBA version of that policy. It's been reviewed by MSBA attorneys. It's used by a majority of the districts in the state, and I think it's pretty solid. So that's what's been presented to you tonight.
Thank you. And may I please hear a motion to approve the first reading of this policy, the Veterans Preference, as described by Jeremy?
I'll make a motion for that.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Here's an opportunity to ask questions. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We have our Veterans Preference first reading of the policy. The next topic on the agenda is another policy, which is SBR 700-60-8, which is the employee right to know and exposure to hazardous substances. It's yours.
All right, thank you. I know this is just riveting work that we're doing right now, but it is something that's necessary. So a couple of changes. This is to our existing policy. So this is, again, not a new policy. This is changes to our existing policy to keep up with current statutes and rules. So there's an addition of the word bloodborne pathogen in the general statement. That was not originally in the policy. There's also the term annual training, so meaning moving from just you have to have training, that this has to happen every year. So that would be that would be a structural change that we will have to make. So rather than just doing a training without any time periods, we're going to have to make sure that we implement this on a yearly basis. And then addition of agent or bloodborne pathogen. And then there's some minor grammatical changes that are made. So very little that's being changed. The only real practical thing that's being changed by this policy is that requirement to move to a yearly versus an unspecified time frame in the original policy.
Okay, this is also an action item, and so may I hear a motion to approve the first reading of this revised policy, the employee right to know and exposure to hazardous substances?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor to approving the first reading of the employee right to know exposure and exposure to hazardous substances, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That has carried unanimously also. The next topic on our agenda is another policy, which is the 700-60-1, and this one is the protection and privacy of pupil records.
All right, so last legislative session, there was a concern by the legislators that we need to protect third-party data that's being collected. So there was a statute that was passed, and so this is basically a response to that statute. And so the changes there, there's an addition of section page, it's on page 99 of your board packet, on educational support service status. So this is basically articulating that we have protections put in place that are guaranteed in statute in our policy, again, to keep up with that statutory change that was made last year. That is the only substantial change.
Thank you. And it is a action item, which means, may I please hear a motion to approve the first reading of the protection and privacy of pupil records?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. And a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. That's okay. It's a race sometimes. And so there was a motion and a second, and any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that also passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is, again, a policy, and it's the first reading of the mandated reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. Jeremy.
All right, this policy looks very close to what you just passed. This is one dealing with vulnerable adults. There's also a policy that was just passed recently by the school board that focuses on students. All right, so if you look at this language, a lot of this language, you're going to say, didn't I just read this policy? But the only change there is really focusing on adults. So this is a mandated policy, again, that we must pass a policy. We don't have to pass this policy, but we have to have a policy on mandated reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. So this basically spells out the rules around reporting maltreatment of vulnerable adults, and in a similar fashion as we do with children. So the concept is very similar, but it just is a policy that's specific to vulnerable adults versus our minor students. So it's just kind of a mirrored image of the minor student policy.
So this is the first reading of the policy that Jeremy just described, and it's the mandated reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. And so may I please hear a motion to adopt that policy?
I'll motion that.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And so now is a chance to ask questions? Comments? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion, that policy and that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I believe we might be done with the policy for the evening, unless you got something up your sleeve there. Okay. The next topic on our agenda is a discussion about public comment, placement, and procedures, and I'll turn this over to Jeremy.
Thank you very much. So this was a topic that was brought up by the school board that we want to address and talk through. What I'm asking tonight is direction on two things. One is, where do we want to have public comment placed in our agenda? And secondly, I'm looking for the rules that are going to pertain. I did review our policy. Our policy is a very good policy, very solid. It's an MSBA policy. It spells things out very nicely. But like anything, very few people are going to actually read through the entire policy. So what I'd like to do is there's a public comment application. And on that public comment application, we have the rules that we are currently using for public comment. What I'd like to do is there's a couple suggestions I've made, and again, they're just suggestions, they're completely up to the board on how they want to deliver this, but there's a couple of things that I would like to point out as we go through this. And what that would be in the public input application, again, these are suggested changes, these are not things that the board would have to do, is one, we've been using a 30-minute time frame for the public comment, just to make sure that you can't have 5 hours of public comment, right? You have to set a limit. So it would be to articulate that. Again, that's already in we already have those type of limitations in practice, but to be very clear and articulate so that everyone in the community included understands what the rules that are pertaining here. The second one is to really focus on that concept that we talked about last time, that public comment, public citizens have the right to criticize policy, they have the right to criticize decisions. We don't criticize people in public, right? There's a process that we have that's very clear on how we deal with personnel. So if there's issues with a personnel that a person wants to bring forward, they reduce it to writing, it comes to the superintendent. It's my job to work on that. If it's with the superintendent, then it is put into writing and goes to the school board chair. The school board then deals with that. So we have a process in place, but it's not a public process, right? We don't stand out there and talk about, we don't think Jeremy's a very good person or something like that. That's not something that we do in public. What we do in public, though, is we can criticize decisions. We can criticize policy. That's completely on the table for discussion. We don't criticize people. And so that's a concept that I've tried to put into this document as well, is just so we're very clear on that. And then the third item is the what if. So what if people decide to violate these rules? What if people decide to move forward and say, we don't care, we're going to continue to criticize individuals at a public meeting, or we're going to continue to talk about data protected information, so data privacy protected information. What do we do? So my suggestion in here, again, just a suggestion, this is for the board to determine, is to do something like if with a willful violation that it can be up to 3 months of not being able to speak at public comment. There's got to be a penalty for breaking rules. Otherwise, what's the point of having rules? And so those are the three concepts that I've put into the public input application for your review. And again, these are completely optional. This is for the board to determine. But I wanted a starting place so we can have some conversation around what does that public input application look like. So that would be one item, and then the second one is for the board to determine where public comment should be in the agenda. So I'm looking for a motion after some discussion that would deal with or give me direction on both those items if you so choose.
Let's, please, to be able to open this conversation up, please, I'd like to hear a motion to, at this time, to adopt the policy as provided in the agenda packet, and then also the page of the public input application as described on page 141. And then we can go from there with comments and questions and ideas. It'll give us a place to start.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, so there's opportunity now to take a deeper dive on the proposal.
So looking at other school districts, for example, I looked into Sartell, Brainerd, and Duluth. I just picked 3. They all have their public speaking right after the adoption of the agenda. And looking further into it, it makes sense to put that after the adoption of the agenda, because if somebody in the audience wants to talk about something on the agenda that we're going to be discussing, they have that opportunity to do that before a vote. And it just makes no sense to have it at the very end of the meeting, after everything is said and done.
So I think public comment is essential to understanding our community better. The purpose of a public comment is for those in attendance to express their support, input, and concerns regarding the operation of our district. We all play a role in how that works and stuff. I think that we definitely have to, any policies we have in place, we have to make sure that they're clear and concise. Looking at a bunch of lawsuits that have gone through on treading on people's freedom of speech, we have to make sure that there's a clear understanding from the community and from us on what constitutes as what would be like if they were speaking out of line. You know, if we've made that clear, we just have to make sure it's clear. I definitely am for having it whenever. I guess it doesn't really matter to me when we have it. You know, I enjoy having people here. I enjoy hearing from people. I enjoy hearing different perspectives. You know, I think it just has to be done with civility. You know, and all of us are going to have different perspectives. So what I might find offensive and rude, the next person next to me might not find that offensive and rude. Same with speakers. Speakers might not think that what they're saying is out of line or offensive. So I think as long as we just keep an open mind about that. But definitely any policy that we put in place, it would be nice for our community to understand what the clear policy is and what they can be like penalized for if they overstep those boundaries.
Pardon me, but I was a little confused on the motion. Are we talking about the guidelines or are we talking about the placement?
I realize that I didn't speak to the placement of it within our agenda, so we could amend that motion to add the placement, or we could just make a separate motion for the location within the agenda. What would you like?
I didn't quite hear that, Ann. What was that?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I did not include the placement of the public comment within that motion, and I should have, but, so that leaves us with two options. One, we could amend the motion, or we could just make a separate motion for the placement within the agenda.
So I can make a motion to amend the motion to include the placement of the public speaking. I would like to make that motion.
To where exactly in the agenda?
To the beginning of the agenda.
You have to be specific.
Sorry. After the, is it
be
approval?
approval,
Thank you.
yeah.
After the approval, thank you.
Okay, so everybody, so now the amendment to our original motion is including the location of the public comment period to fall after the call to order. And did you say the approval of the agenda? Or before that, after or before it?
After the approval of the
So
agenda.
after the approval of the agenda.
Correct.
Okay, so that would be item number 3 as we realign the numerical order. May I hear, so you made that motion. May I hear a second, please? This is an amendment
second
to the
that.
original. Thank you. Any comments?
Yeah, I do have some comments. First of all,
On this, on the amended motion.
on the amended motion.
Okay. On the placement within the agenda?
Well, the guidelines and the placement.
So we have an amended motion, and so what we need to do is approve the amendment so that we can include it back into the first motion. Yeah. So specifically, it should be, you know, if you want it somewhere else, now's the time. Okay.
I'd like to make a comment in regards to that motion. So I think it is important that we do place it at the top so that we can hear the voice of the people. I think that we've been elected to this board of the people, by the people, for the people. So we represent you. We represent this community. And we need to hear your voices. We need to hear your input. It's important when we make decisions to have feedback on very critical issues for our district. So by having you at the end of the agenda, essentially you're being silenced. So I'm very, very favorable towards putting this at the top because we want to hear from our community. And that's why we were elected, is to represent you. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just get clarification on that?
Yes.
I'm a little confused. So if they're still speaking at the end of the meeting, how are they being silenced? Can you clarify that for me?
Well, they wouldn't be speaking on the current agenda items until the end of the meeting. So we would be passing agenda items without hearing from the community. I want to hear from the community on agenda items. I believe we all do. We want to hear from them. We want their input. It could sway us in the way that we vote, the way that we decide. It should, to hear from them. It should persuade us.
So does the agenda, I'm sorry, Jordan, I need your help here. So does the agenda go out to the public before the meeting or no?
Chair, members of the board, yes, all agendas are required to be publicly posted at least 3 days prior to the meeting of the board. So it is sent out to local media and it's made available to the general public via the school's website and through the normal media postings.
So again, just to clarify, there's no silencing because the community can still reach out to us and talk to us about stuff on the agenda and have a conversation with us and give us some insight before we vote on the agenda. I just want to make sure that I understand this. So just to make sure that I understand, there is no silencing of the community. That's just what I want to clear up.
I think it would be very challenging for a community member to reach out and call each and every board member to discuss agenda items. To give them a voice in our meetings allows them to freely and openly speak to all of us at once. It simplifies things. It's a better representation of our community's voice, and that's what we want. That's what I want. I hope that's what we all want, is to hear from the community. We are elected officials.
I would like to add to that just for me, it would be an exercise of respect to the public that has put us in this place and you know, that to give you the opportunity, the floor to voice what you'd like to voice and to go along with the guidelines in that, you know, that you understand what those are. And I think Superintendent Olson outlined those very clearly, that it's not an opportunity to bash persons or to call names or anything like that. But if you have concerns about policy and procedures, that type of thing, we want to hear from you. And for me, I feel it's the most respectful way is to let you go first. And that's where I come from it at.
I do want to point out too, decisions too. So like, you know, we make decisions all the time. It is perfectly acceptable for the community to come and challenge decisions we've made. Again, just drawing that line between a personal attack and making sure that and also that we protect data privacy. Those are some things that we have some legal obligations around as well. So it actually ends up protecting the individual speaking too from some slander and so forth. So there's some good benefits to the district to have strong procedures that are enforceable, that are reasonable, and so that's what we're trying to suggest. So you know, I think, you know, I'm getting a sense directionally where the board wants to be from a placement. You know, I know that, you know, I'd really appreciate some input from you on these procedures, because this is just me putting together suggestions to have a placeholder to start from, and then seeking direction from you as a board on how we move forward.
The only thing that I would like to add
in our application, are we still discussing that portion of it after the amendment? I was reviewing the policy. I would just like to pull out the piece in the policy that states that the public input application, there should be, in my opinion, that the public speaking needs to be pertinent to our agenda for the evening.
So for clarification, are you looking at the public input application with the red?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And that's already in policy. So it's just pulling that little piece out of policy to put it on the application for the public to see.
Okay, and that is an amendment to our original motion, so, yeah, it's okay. This is how we do better work.
And again, just so I understand, so you're saying that we should put into this public input application a clause in there that the topics addressed must be pertinent to our agenda?
Correct, agenda related for the evening.
I thought there was room for people to do public comment that we wouldn't decide at this and have on this agenda, but they could voice a concern that we'll take and look at later on.
This is the board meeting.
I do believe historically, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think historically we have had a more open, limited public forum there. I don't think we've historically condensed it to the agenda items. But again, I'm open to what, obviously you're the board, you make that decision, so we'll just need to come to terms on what that looks like.
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Then we should
Jenny.
probably relook at that in policy.
Can you, which page are you looking at, please?
It is under the agenda items, number 2. Persons who wish to address the school board on a particular subject should identify this, or, excuse me, identify the agenda item which they are commenting on, which their comments pertain.
Just for the knowledge of the board too, we found that there was a discrepancy on our input session form that we have in policy and that which we have in practice right now. And so that was discovered, though too late, so we're looking at bringing this policy back next month. So if there's something that you would like addressed in that policy, I would, having a conversation with you would be great. Historically, again, our practice has not been to be that limiting. However, I do see what Jenny's pointing out, a very important thing is in our policy, there is some, our practice and our procedure and our policy don't align in that area. So that may be something to take a look at. So really what we're going to need to know is the wishes of the board, whether you want it to be contained to just an agenda item or if you want it to be a little bit more open, which is historically what we've done.
Why wouldn't we want it to be more open? I'm asking the board.
So that we're not eliminating, but because we have a time restriction on our public speaking session, it really hones in on the public sharing, agenda items. So if they have a complaint, something that we voted on 3 months ago, there's different avenues to take. So we can really focus on agenda-related concerns. Of course, I want to hear from the public. Of course, I want to hear all their, complaints, but at a school board meeting for complaints that happened a year ago, or, something that's not even pertinent that's coming up, then there's other avenues to express those concerns. So I'm fine. If we want to open it up to listening to whatever, let's do that, but let's be consistent with our policies and our application.
And again, what I'm hearing Jenny say is she's pointing out that there's an issue with our policy and procedure. I don't sense that there's a stand there. She's pointing this out and saying, let's be consistent, which I very much appreciate.
And I'm actually fine with that, too. It doesn't matter to me. I'm fine with hearing from the community. Again, there's some legalities that the community has to be aware of, too, going through the Constitution, an amendment in the first the freedom of speech, the fighting words, hostile audiences, and true threats. So again, when we just open up a forum, that's a liability that they take and we possibly take legality-wise that may not bode well for them or for us. So again, it's, again, trying to measure, and that's where Jordan might come in and have some input on, the legality ramifications of that.
Yeah, what the board has established is what's called a limited public forum, which means that we have the ability to set rules and limitations, but we have to be consistent in our application of those rules and limitations, and it has to be viewpoint neutral, meaning that we can't, whatever the rules are, they're for all sides, right? You can't just say, well, I agree with your opinion, we're going to have different rules for you, and I don't agree with your opinion, we're going to have different rules. The limited public forum is a legal concept that really focuses on the board can set the parameters, but we set the parameters and we stick to the parameters. We don't deviate from them. That's when you get, as you're pointing out, that's when we get into legal trouble if we start deviating or being viewpoint heavy, saying, I agree with this viewpoint, so we're going to allow you a little bit more time and not you. It's fair and consistent is really what they're looking for.
I'm thinking that what I'm hearing is perhaps the way to work this process through is to treat it like other policies that we've done this evening. We have a first reading and then we have a second reading. And so we can fix it in between the first tonight and the second next month, because there's also right in on the title that needs a change within the policy that we're looking at. And so I would like to make a recommendation, perhaps somebody can make the motion, is if we amend our first motion to include the recognition that this is the first reading of the policy, of the location within the agenda to provide that public comment, that we can do that, and then our next meeting, we will, just like every other policy, come back to the second reading next month. And that will give Jeremy time to do a deeper dive into here to make sure everything is consistent with the expectations that we are aware of now.
I have a question as well. So currently, the public comment section is not live streamed. Is the intention to live stream the public comment time?
So the intention would be that would be the live stream portion of the meeting. So the answer, where I believe you're going to place it based on the comments here, is the answer would be yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question about the placement of it, and when and why was it moved to the end of the meetings? Because I remember before it was at the beginning of the meetings, and I don't know if anybody could fill in the answer to that.
I'm trying to recollect, there was, it was a time when there were a number of people that would come and speak about people versus policy. And so it's that trying to figure out how to best work with a word that is spoken already, and how do you rescind those words as it's videotaped and broadcast. So that was trying to continue the public comment opportunities and mitigate consistent speaking about people. So that's as best I can remember, but there may be more that I'm not remembering.
So then, was that a motion made to do that, or was it just a change in procedure, or how did that get implemented?
That I don't remember. Because I think actually it was done at a meeting I wasn't here at, so, what do you say? Oh, you're going.
I was going to say, I believe we looked that up, and I believe that was a motion and second. Is that correct?
I don't, it's in my other board book.
Okay.
But
It wasn't, I think it was an action taken by the board, if memory serves.
It was listed in there. I'm not sure that there was a motion in a second, but it was in June, the special board meeting that it listed in there, which is in my
To be safe, I think what I should do is I should just give you a quick report to the board when we look at the minutes, because I don't want to go off a memory. So I do know we looked into it, and I can't quite remember how that was spelled out, but it was handled during a board meeting.
So from the stuff I found, especially from Reuters.com, who did a study of, anonymous actually study of 220 examples of intimidations going through school board members. For years, overwhelmingly, school board meetings were not about cultural flashpoints. They were mundane, yet vital local topics like bond issues, student recognition, and staff pay increases is what was talked about at board meetings. When 2020 hit, and that seems to be the famous year, all of a sudden, school board meetings were being used to push agendas through. School board members started getting death threats, not against just themselves, but their grown children. There was one that her adult child caught a letter that threatened to kill them both unless she left the board. Her name is Brenda Sheridan, out of Virginia. The letter went to go on to say, "It's too bad that your mother is an ugly communist," bad word. And if she doesn't quit or resign before the end of the year, we will kill her, but first we will kill you. And that's just one example of 220 examples that they shared. So it's not just our board that made that decision, it's boards across the nation. I guess I'm not sure either, Jeremy. I'll be curious to hear why that decision was made. I'm guessing it wasn't made lightly. I don't know how many of us have ever gotten death threats. I know I haven't, to my face at least, let alone my children.
I'm not sure how death threats relates to the placement of public comment.
I think it's because that people were using
Excuse me, please. This is a board meeting, and we're talking amongst ourselves. And while I valued your Pledge of Allegiance lead, please be quiet now. And I'm talking to you in the Wisconsin sweatshirt. Thank you. Be quiet.
I think that it was noted that that's why they were using it. They were using the televisions to push their agenda forward. So not to necessarily talk to the board, but to talk about stuff that they wanted to talk about and get it to a wider audience.
So I'm still, seeking direction. I think I see the direction the board's going, but I do need to know what our next steps are, because obviously, it's my job to move this forward after a decision from you. So I would like to know what you would like me to do next year.
I would say a motion to move it to the right after the approval. Why can't I think of it either? Sorry. I would motion that.
Jordan, is
Thank-
making it a first reading going to work or not? Please.
Thank you, Chair of the Board, members of the Board. Right now, you have an amended motion before you. The motion is to adopt the procedures that have been presented and the form that has been presented, and to move the placement onto the agenda right after approval of the agenda. If the board so chooses, you could do an additional amendment to have it a first reading and move it forward as a change to the policy. Because right now, the motion that's in front of you that you would be asked to act on would be to approve the procedures in the form and to move the placement to after the approval of the agenda. Any action to address the content of the policy would need either an additional amendment to the motion that's before you or a subsequent amendment after, or a subsequent motion after you've acted on the motion that's on the table.
And because of the timing of this too, just want to make sure everyone understands that we're going to need to do an amendment to our policy. So next month, you're going to have a first reading of this policy. But again, I know that the desire of the board was to talk about this and deal with this issue too. So that's why we decided, instead of holding off on it, we wanted to talk about it now. But there will have to be amendments or changes to the policy based on the decisions that happened tonight in a first reading next month, and then a finalization. That won't affect the public comment placement, but that'll just affect the policy, if that makes any sense.
Okay, so that's slightly different than what I was thinking, the process that we were at now as considering this to be the first reading with changes over this month, the second reading next month. But I heard you say next month was the first reading. So Jordan has his finger on his mic.
Again, you have a number of options in front of you. The first thing that you have is you have a motion as amended that requires action by the board. The actions that you can take are to amend it further to include first reading of revisions to SBR 100-10-3R, or you can act on the motion as it currently is amended in front of you and then discuss a second motion to amend upon first reading the policy. So there are two courses of action that the board can take to move forward with the motion that's in front of you, or to amend it further to also include first reading of revisions to SBR 100-10-3R.
Does anybody have preference? I think we may be able to move forward with a final reading if we make a motion to recognize, an amendment that this is our first reading of policy, what's the number, 100-10-3R, and recognize through that amendment that the work will be done in the interim prior to next month, and the second reading then would be held in March. And there is still opportunity in that second reading then to look at that and make change. But we would be inclusive of changes to the policy as written, to recognize, both the concern about people commenting on people versus policy, the placement of the public speaking opportunity within the agenda. And then there was a third thing I was going to mention, but I've forgotten. Okay.
I have a preference to vote for the public comment section to be voted on this evening, to move it to after the approval of the agenda, and we can change whatever we need to change at the next meeting. That would be my preference.
So just so I understand, so you're saying to add it as a first reading so that next month we can have a finalized policy to expedite things, basically?
Yeah, I'd like to vote tonight on moving the public discussion to the top. I would like to see that voted on tonight.
It would be voted on tonight if we made that amendment, yeah. But it would be inclusive of the being within the policy. Okay. Looking at affirmation over there, Jordan, please.
Chair, members of the board, if that is the wishes of the board, then somebody will need to make a motion to amend to include the revisions to SBR 100-10-3R on first reading tonight.
And that is also inclusive of, to be more specific, any narrative changes in the policy itself, as we've heard and identified within the board, the comments, like, Jenny, the people versus the policy kind of business. And then also recognizing the placement within our agenda as included within the amendment. And as a first reading then, we would be coming back with the amended policy for the second approval.
So the way that I would understand that is that by voting on that amendment, Justin, I think what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is by adding that amendment, saying we're going to have this as a first reading, my understanding was that that would be a first reading of the rules and procedures, but the placement on the agenda would then be effective for next month. Like it would be effective and put in place for the March board meeting, is my understanding. Is that what I'm understanding? I just want to make sure I have a correct understanding of that.
Anybody else have any input, desires on how we should move with this?
Well, I would concur with that, and what that includes then is that public comment will come at the beginning of the meetings, right after the agenda report.
Okay. Well, that was my interpretation also.
Was that what I motioned, or no? I'm lost now.
All right, so I think we've been talking, Justin, just to expedite this, if someone would make the motion to amend it as a first reading, which I think is what you're wanting to do, and then we just need a second, and then we need to vote on it and move forward. If that's what I'm hearing, you guys want to move forward. So what that would mean is that this would be the first reading. The second reading, so the procedure that we talked about, that would become effective at the end of when it's approved in March. But the placement of the agenda item, the public comment, would be effective for March.
Yeah.
So we need a
Great, that would be
motion.
wonderful.
So Julie, wait, I just want to make sure, does that speak to what you spoke to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Just double checking. It's been an interesting process.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
So I still need her to actually, so her motion is.
No, I think it's Justin's. Do you,
Justin made the amendment.
the amended motion, please? Thank you. Okay, so you made the motion for the amendment. Thank you. May I hear a second?
Me, I seconded.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? All righty, hearing none, all those in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All, any opposed, please say no. All right, that passed. Oofda. Are we done, Jordan?
Chair, members of the board, you have successfully made sausage.
Thanks for helping us to navigate. This is why you're the parliamentarian.
What I also want to make comment to, this is the process that we use. We have 6 very different opinions on things, and we work together and we compromise and we get things done. So thank you for that process and getting to this conclusion.
Okay. We are now in item number 7 on our agenda, which is workforce development, and a little bit about information about our staff development day coming up in February. In February still? Today. Sorry, Colleen and maybe Lexi. Thank you.
Okay, Chair and members of the board. Today was Staff Development Day, and just a real quick update, our elementary staff participated in a Tier 1 instructional training with Bill Zima out of Marzano's Resources. The focus was on an overview of our district's instructional plan and priority standards. The middle school staff attended a training from Sanford Health on suicide and a peacemakers training. Training while the middle school staff was training with a science team, actually met with John Olson, who is an expert across the nation in the area of science, and he worked with our staff on the NGS new science standards. The high school staff focused on the redesign of their syllabus and, of course, the implementation of the 5-period day. And then Lexi's going to talk about the paras.
All right, thank you, Colleen. Good evening, board chair, members of the board. We really do enjoy these days as they give us an opportunity to collaborate, learn, and really hone in and improve on our practices. Something we did today during our staff development that hasn't been done in the past is a workshop day for non-certified staff. We were able to provide over 25 sessions successfully. There were breakout sessions, many of which were completely full and had directly related to work-based and interest-based programming. We had a lot of positive feedback as staff felt like they received resources that they could immediately put into practice and look forward to additional sessions. So it was a great day for our paraprofessionals, non-certified staff. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for that summary. Any comments or questions about the Workforce Development Day opportunity? All right. Thank you again. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is looking at upcoming events, and we have our next school board meeting on March 20th at 6:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. And any upcoming events around the district that you want to mention?
Yes, we have several upcoming events. So we have a pop concert on February 28th at Bemidji High School. On March 2nd, Dr. Seuss's birthday celebration, Horace May Elementary. Sorry, now Dr. Seuss quotes are going through my head, and I'm going to stop right there. So March 2nd, 6th, and 7th, elementary conferences. March 6th, orchestra concert, Bemidji High School. March 6th and 7th, middle school conferences. March 6th through 10th, Gene Dillon Book Fair. March 17th and 18th, Six Appeal Concert. Saturday, March 18th, Junior ROTC Ball. March 20th, Academic Showcase Night. March 20th through 21st, Book Fair. And Friday, March 24th, Horace May PTO Movie Night. So several things going on around our district.
Thank you. It sounds like I'm reminiscent of my oldest daughter. Her favorite time of the year was book fairs. So we're there with you. Okay, now we are moved into other on our agenda, and the first thing it says is interesting. It's the Minnesota School Board's Recognition Month, and Jeremy's got something to share.
I do. So February is School Board Recognition Month. It's not an easy job, in case you guys haven't figured out. This is a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's a worthwhile challenge. The Minnesota School Boards Association wants to celebrate February as School Board Recognition Month. So what I'm going to ask the school board is that at the conclusion of this meeting, if we could just gather and have a quick shot that will go on our website. We're going to take a photo of you guys. And then I do have certificates of appreciation from MSBA for serving on the school board. And again, want to recognize and thank you for the service on the board. I know this short time just getting to know you has been a lot of fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And what Jeremy meant, well, afterward, there will be a picture.
That's exactly what I meant. Yes.
It was a day.
Okay.
Yeah. And now we are at our Once Around the Table, which is an opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry. Superintendent's report. I almost forgot you again. You're on board.
Thank you. So I just want to communicate first in the interest of transparency that Ann and I visited about our agenda setting procedures. This is something that some board members brought up and brought to our attention, wanting to move this forward. And so just wanted to, again, in the interest of transparency, let everyone know that we're inviting Dave as the vice chair to be a part of our agenda setting meetings from here on out in an effort to ensure that in the absence of a chair, so these are some of the reasons why I think it's a good idea. In the absence of a chair, the vice chair stands ready to help guide the meeting. And then it also gives us an opportunity to build capacity as a school board, right? So we have 5 new board members on board at this point. This gives us an opportunity to build some capacity, to learn from Ann, and to kind of move forward and as a school board and as a community. I also wanted to thank, again, you guys just kind of stole my thunder, but I appreciate it. Wanted to thank the community for their support. We have had such a tremendous month with the community and their full support of the Special Olympics Unified Basketball Game, the support that they showed to Big E as we were looking at honoring him and recognizing and supporting him at the beginning of a basketball game. I was so pleasantly surprised about how many people came out and just celebrated with us and wanted to honor and support him. It was truly heartwarming to see the level of support that our students showed Big E, that our staff showed, that our community showed. And then also just your support of Special Olympics Unified Basketball. That was tremendous. And as you mentioned, it was really heartwarming to see the responses, to hear the responses in the hallways and of teachers and district office, community members. There was lots of people commenting how much of a unifying experience this was. I also want to share a couple of items that are going around in our school right now. So Bemidji Unified A and B teams are both going to state. So again, congratulations to them, and let's celebrate their success. Mock trial finished in the top 6 teams of 22 in the region. And wrestling, 7 girls are going to state and 8 boys, which ties a school record. So it's not a school record, but it ties one from, I believe, 2004, which we have 8 boys going in individuals. Girls basketball entering sections quarterfinals versus Sartell, which has already been reported. Should be a very interesting game. I believe they're ranked 4th, and I think we're ranked 5th, so should be good. Boys swimming, the BHS, I want to really emphasize this when we talk about extracurricular activities, right? That it's extra to the curricular activities going on, that we need to be strong athletes, but we also need to be stronger students. So the BHS section team GPA for boys swimming was 4.064. Okay, I really wish I had that kind of GPA when I was in high school, but congratulations to them and just their incredible success that they're finding not only as athletes, but also as scholars. I also wanted to emphasize a couple things that we're watching in the legislature right now. This is a big time for us because we're looking at historical levels of funding potentially being for the district. However, we also have historic levels of mandates, and so we have to be very cognizant about watching bills and making sure that we understand their impacts, both the direct impacts and the indirect impacts of these bills. So we're watching House File 5, which is universal free meals, looking at how that might affect our compensatory revenue. We're looking at HF 8, which would be providing student support personnel, so that would be dollars for counselors, school nurses, school psychologists, and school social workers. We're hopeful that that passes because we know after COVID and what our students are dealing with that we need to provide more support there. HF 18, which is fully funding special education, I want to recognize that if we were to get fully funded in transportation and special education, meaning that we didn't have to take and transfer dollars from our K-12 for special education and transportation, that we'd be operating in the black right now. These are important bills for our school district. So as we look at fully funding special education, that would be huge for us if we could get that passed. And then secondly, which is the second issue in transportation sparsity, many districts make money on transportation. We do not. We lose money, and we are transporting charter schools and private schools. But at the end of the day, when the expenses exceed our revenues for transportation, public schools end up footing the bill. And we foot that bill to a tune of, what, 1.5 million? Is that what you reported? That's a large amount. Now, we're looking at the bill right now and supporting and testifying on its behalf that would help close some of that gap to allow additional funding for schools like ours that are massively, we're 2/3 the size of the state of Rhode Island is our transportation square mileage, 825 square miles. We need to do something different, and so that's what we're working on with the legislature. Also, we're looking at bills like HF 879, which is to allow local optional revenue, which would actually decrease local taxes while also increasing funding to schools. And so that's a bill we're looking at as well. And the governor's proposal right now is a 4% and 2%, which a 4% first year, 2% second year in state aid tied to inflation, and a 50% cross subsidies for special education, which would net the district about $1.5 million. So there are some really good bills out there right now in the legislature that could benefit our district, and we're hopeful for. But we are also looking and watching bills that would create excessive mandates for schools and put in and impose district costs and obligations, which we're also trying to lobby against. So this is an important time right now as we try to lobby for what's best for Bemidji area schools. I just want to, I guess, finish with Go Jacks. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was a comprehensive superintendent's report. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I try.
Yep. And so the next item on our agenda is Once Around the Table, and it's an opportunity for board members and cabinet, if you'd like to share a couple of observations related to what you've seen or done or participated in with our schools. So, Nick, would you like to start? Been there, done that. Okay. Julie.
Is it on? Is it on?
Yes. Well, you have to.
Oh, I have to, okay, sorry. Okay. Yeah, actually, I was involved with a lot this month, which was super duper exciting. Obviously, the Bemidji Unified Special Olympics game was amazing. The Bemidji boys basketball game to honor Big E was equally as amazing to see the community come out and support him. The tragic and sudden loss of Coach McKeon was probably one of the most heartbreaking things that happened, but to watch the community rally behind Haley and her family has been amazing. I believe they're doing a meal thing now. Our SNAP program in the middle school, which is a science, nature, and adventure program, went snowshoeing at 3 Mile Island. I went out to Horace May. I was invited out there by the principal, which I appreciate. It was so fun to go back there. I went there in first grade. Looks completely different. Was excited to meet the therapy dog. And notice the love and care and excitement of the teachers and the administration there for those students. The Bemidji Middle School had regional spelling bee students. 4 of our students went to Thief River Falls. 3 were in the top 12 out of 40. Ivy, who is the Final Four, was becoming one of the champions. Our robotics team had their very first home meet. I unfortunately was not able to make it. I'm not sure if anybody was able to make it, but we celebrated Christmas, don't ask, that day. Right, I know, I said don't ask. The girls' basketball team won their 4th straight game with a 70-69 nail biter to end their season, which again, to watch the fans and the community cheer that on. Seth Newby, our senior captain of the wrestling team, was named the 2023 MWCA All-State Academic Wrestling team with a 4.0 GPA. They had Snow Week at BHS. Beth Bolte got academic all-state for basketball. Our middle schoolers visited the high school, which was exciting. They'll go there next year. I volunteered at the speech meet this last weekend where 33 schools came to the high school. There were donations made by parents, teachers, families, Nye Bottling, Northwoods Ice, Raphael's, and Keith's Pizza, another great reminder to shop local. Our Vocomotive was away, had a fire alarm, stood outside for 30 minutes, had a quick second warm-up, and were spectacular. They brought home a huge trophy. First National Bank dropped off a check for the Bemidji area schools for their Angel Fund. If you don't know what the Angel Fund is, that helps pay for unpaid school lunches for our students. That was put together by their employees. And then a big shout out to our BSU basketball men's team. Biggest win in program history for them against Wayne State. They won 79-71. They are in the NSIC semifinals, first time since 2013. So as I was walking through the hallways in the high school, our students are amazing. I can't say that enough. It was so fun to watch them talk to walls or perform before walls, help each other, give advice. I was lucky enough where I got to sit and watch my daughter do her speech meet, which I guess is rare. Most kids don't allow that. I didn't even recognize her. I had no idea who this little girl was when she got in front of the room and talked. The girl that spoke before her, I cried. Her speech was amazing. I thanked her afterwards. I said, thank you so much. Your speech was wonderful. I sat in the final for the humor one, laughed hysterically, cried hysterically. I mean, these students are so amazing. The program that the speech coaches have, going all the way from their computer program to help them get the kids to the finals, to help locate kids, to get judges to the right rooms. I mean, I am so proud to be Bemidji High School alumni. I remember I was walking out to the car to move my car, and a load of students was coming off one of the buses, and a couple of the kids looked, and they're like, this is their school? The kids go to school here? I mean, they were amazed at how big our school was and how nice it was. So, yeah, lots to be proud of with our students and community.
Well, I'm kind of feeling funny because wrestlers and swimmers have high GPAs, but hockey players don't, which is historically proven, I think. But anyway, I did give Jeremy an education because we went to a hockey game together. St. Albertville, I think, was playing. We lost 3-2, but it was really fun, and Jeremy's wiser now and understanding things of the North even better.
I still don't know hockey. Sorry to break it to you.
All right. Anyway, some of the things I've been doing lately, I'm trying twice a week to go to visit a school, and I have already been to some. I went to Horace May at the invitation there, which was great to see a couple of my grandkids in action too, and that was pretty special. And then I was out at Solway this past week and also read to the second grade class there, which was good. And I missed lunch, I found out from the staff there, but that's okay. I'll try and arrange it again some other time. And then I've also been trying to attend some of the, I'm not even sure what they're called. Colleen, that thing I went to,
Just staff trainings.
just staff trainings and participate in them, and they're great and a good way to get out and meet people. And I think in my endeavors, that's what I want to do, is get out and hear the principals and their passions. And you hear some of the teachers, Tim over in Solway there, man, I was impressed, just his passion for those students, and everything's about learning, and it was really good. And the kids were so engaged in the class. I did throw them a little loop. I started off speaking another language, and they were kind of like wide-eyed. So I had them hooked in at least, but they maintained their interaction and good questions, and it was just really fun to be involved in. So I have the next 3 weeks, 2 schools each week I'm going to get to, and then I still have one to book, Lincoln. I'm going to get over there eventually too, but so that's what I've been up to.
Okay, mine is definitely not that long, so I'll spare you all. I'm a hockey mom, and so this time of year, it's always bittersweet. It's coming to an end. However, that means that spring is right around the corner. And so I just want to thank all the students who participated and the dedication during the winter sports time. It can be very long, but you guys put a lot of heart and soul into what you do. And then also to the parents and the guardians who drive these kids hundreds of miles all over the state, and I'm not talking hockey, dance. And also then to the coaches and what it means to be a coach. They communicate, they're credible, trusting, competent, and respectful. So just thank you to all the sports and activity kids and parents out there.
Yes, dance. Lots of driving. And the Blue Angels High School dance team has wrapped up. They had their final show in February. Man, talented, flexible kiddos there. I'll sum up quickly because all the sports teams have done really well and they're wrapping up. So good luck to the state-bound wrestling team. Let's see, I did see the Early Childhood Center had their community visitors this past week, and there was some really fun pictures on their website if you get a chance to peek out at that. So thank you to the community members if you made a visit out there. And yeah, that I will just echo everything on that unified basketball game. Best word I can come up with is wow. And same with the Big E basketball game. It has been an amazing month of community engagement. I too am getting out to some of those schools. I get to go down to Horace May tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. And yes, spring is around the corner. We have started marching band meetings, so here we go.
What I'm about to say is said from a heart of love, a love for future generations to come, a love for my country, and a love for every American citizen. I've thought much and prayed much about the decision by this board last month to not start our meetings reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. To be honest, myself and many in our community were deeply hurt by this decision, and it continues to concern me. Last year, I visited the country of Iraq, and I met several Christians from the country of Iran. Several times I was asked a specific question that keeps resounding in my mind from the Iranians. They would ask me, what is it like to live in the great country of America where you have freedom? Again and again, I heard that word, freedom. I recite the Pledge of Allegiance because I have the same vision as our founding fathers had, a vision of freedom, a vision that the next generation will grow up and live in a land marked by people who are willing to stand and even die for one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, freedom, and justice for all. When I stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm standing for one nation. She is indivisible. She is unable to be divided or separated. We are the United States of America. By not allowing people to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, we may believe that we are being inclusive or mindful of others' feelings, but we are actually being exclusive, judgmental, and prejudiced because we have forcibly silenced those who desire to stand and recite the pledge. When I stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm standing for one nation under God and their right to worship God freely. Thomas Jefferson said, "We shall be a nation with freedom of religion, not freedom from religion," which is what we're seeing today. When I stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm standing for a nation that is free from injustice and discrimination. The Declaration of Independence states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness." We live in the greatest country in the world. The truths of the Pledge of Allegiance are at the very heart of what it means to be an American. Someone once said, "I would rather die standing on my feet defending freedom than live on my knees bowing to tyranny and oppression." There comes a time in life when you need to stand for what you believe is right and true and just, and now is such a time. Therefore, I would like to thank the man in red who held up that beautiful American flag and led us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I don't scold you, I praise you for standing for what is right. During my 2-year term, I commit that I will exercise my God-given, blood-bought freedom to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance before our meetings. Thank you.
Would any cabinet like to add some thoughts to this evening's meeting? Okay. Again, Chrissy, thank you so much for your service over time. This is your last board meeting, and I will miss your presence, and I will miss your knowledge and your means of communicating the budget to people that, like myself, that I can do natural resources and supervision, but not the budget. So thank you again, and I wish you all the best as you move to your new position.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a couple things I wanted to highlight and mention. There's been, in amongst everything everybody else has mentioned, a few things I was able to cross off my list. But I am extraordinarily interested in providing for safety of our students and our staff. And so I do want to make mention that the district, again, that we received a Stop Arm grant from the Minnesota Department of Safety to purchase cameras and install them on all of our buses. Those cameras will allow bus drivers and others to help law enforcement find any violators that are passing the school buses when both the blinking lights are on and the stop arm is on, so that those people can be found and held accountable. Student safety getting off those buses is just critical to the health and well-being of our families, our community, and our schools, and schoolmates. So I just wanted to highlight that. I think that that is a fabulous grant. The other thing is Jean Dillon does a lot of things, and they have a Lego League for robotics, and that must be a super robotics team, because just think of the colors that Legos have, and then to have robots made out of Legos, it's really cool. They call themselves the Squirrel Busters, and they have become regional champions very lately, and will be able to then move down to the state championship and compete in that in a short while. So congratulations to the Squirrel Busters of Jean Dillon. That's just cool. And then I want to mention that the U.S. Army, the Junior ROTC, is moving forward to recognize their 20th annual military ball, and that is an opportunity to both recognize the ROTC members in many different ways, and then to have a more formal dinner, and then an opportunity to enjoy themselves through music and through dance and chatting, and the ability to get to know everybody and provide that opportunity for celebration for their participation and their fellow JROTC members. That also is an opportunity provided at the high school. So their ball is coming up, and community members are, perhaps you might know a JROTC member and be invited to their evening of celebration. So that's what I wanted to make mention. And anything else come to mind to go back? No? Okay. So we still have some agenda topics, and the one next on